Hello, this is World Business Report from the BBC World Service, where we bring you the latest in money, marketing, manufacturing, and yes, much, much more. Please review us, rate us, share us wherever you can. BBC podcasts are supported by advertising.
This is World Business Report from the BBC World Service. Hello, I'm Sasha Twining. Welcome. On today's programme, we have the latest economic news from China, plus the NBA team that are hoping that a move into the entertainment brand may be the slum dunk that it's looking for. And has COVID-19 permanently changed the way job interviews are conducted? We try out the new technology helping job hunters to adapt.
I guess it feels like a kind of co-working space, and there's a very friendly, calm, relaxed-looking man opposite me, and I guess he's my virtual interviewer.
More on those stories coming up, but we're going to start the programme with news that workers at Apple's Grand Central Station store in New York have announced a plan to start a union. If their bid is successful, it will be the first union at one of the tech giant's US stores, and follows moves by both Starbucks and Amazon employees to unionise. Well, just before we came on air, I spoke to Anna Kramer, a workplace, tech, labour and tech culture reporter at news site Protocol, and asked her why employees wanted to take this stance.
So there's actually been sort of grumblings and rumblings amongst Apple retail workers over the last year about unionization, because last year there was a movement called Apple II where workers started to share stories of sort of difficult working conditions inside some of the Apple retail stores, but nobody had actually gone through with any formal union movement until the news over the last 24 hours or so, where we have workers at the Grand Central Apple store in Manhattan, a small group of them announcing that they are distributing union cards. And the main reasons they're giving for doing that are the unprecedented conditions of the pandemic combined with inflation and rising costs means that they're hoping a union can ask for better benefits and wages.
This obviously isn't guaranteed that they would get this status. I mean, how does this play out for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way the union process in general works in the US involves some kind of petitioning process where you're trying to get about 30% of your workforce to agree that they want to participate in a union election and to signal their support for a union. So that's the stage that we're in right now. So there's a group of workers that have affiliated themselves with a national union called Workers United, and they're distributing these things that we call cards to everybody that they work with, saying, if we can get 30% of you to sign these cards, then we have a right to first ask Apple if they're interested in voluntarily recognizing a union. And then if not, they have a right to have an election administered by the National Labor Relations Board that would determine whether or not the workers become part of a union.
And do we know what Apple has said about this? First of all, about the allegations, the fairly negative comments they've made about working conditions, but also about the prospect of them forming a union.
So we have very little from Apple. I spoke to somebody at Apple today, and what they're willing to say publicly is, you know, we're proud of our retail workers. We believe we give them strong compensation and strong benefits. And aside from that, we don't have any information from Apple yet.
Anna, let's just widen this out a little bit, because obviously we've heard similar stories being linked to Starbucks, the drive of workers there for unionization, also with Amazon and yet another depot sort of saying in the last few hours that they also want to go down this route. You know, what's the wider picture here? What's happening?
Yeah, so this is more success for unions in private sector companies in the United States than we've seen in decades. One of the really important connections to draw here is to the Starbucks movement, because we've got, I think it's 20 or a little bit over Starbucks stores have formally successfully unionized. And there are possibly hundreds more on the way or in that sort of election process that I described earlier. And they are working with the same national union, Workers United, that is working with these Apple workers in Grand Central. And so the Apple workers is pretty comfortable, easy conclusion to draw that there's some inspiration from the Starbucks movement there, given that they've chosen the same national union. And then at the same time, given what we're seeing at Amazon, there are even some Amazon workers who voted for the first successful Amazon union earlier this month at the beginning of April, who said that they were inspired by what was happening with Starbucks. So I think we can see that there's this broad pattern of union support emerging sort of in the private sector that we haven't seen before, even if it is really quite small in the grand scheme of private sector employees.
Anna Kramer there. Well, what impact has China's economic data had on the markets? A little earlier, I spoke to Peter Jankovskis of Arbor Financial Services in Illinois.
I think overall, if you look at the U.S. market, they were somewhat upbeat in terms of their assessment. We saw the energy sector ticking higher, oil prices moving higher. That all suggests that the numbers were better than perhaps some of the worst fears.
But the suggestion is, well, not a suggestion, but these figures don't cover the time of the most recent lockdowns in Shanghai. Was there any concern over that?
Well, I think there could be some of that. We're definitely seeing some weakness in industrials, consumer staples, healthcare here in the U.S., which would translate to, some concerns perhaps in those areas. We'll just have to wait and see how that lockdown plays out in terms of their growth going forward. Certainly they're so recent that they didn't have much impact at all on the first quarter figures, but we could see something more substantial as we move through the second quarter.
And with that carrying on, if indeed it does, or perhaps from the impact it's already made, what about the effect on global supply chains again? Yes,
that certainly could be an issue, and perhaps that's what we're seeing in the industrials and consumer staples space, that those supply chain issues will hurt them probably more than other sectors.
Peter Jankovskis there. Now, here's a question. When does a sports team transcend the pitch or field and become an entertainment brand in its own right? Well, the Golden State Warriors are hoping to do just that. Based in San Francisco, they're the second most valuable NBA franchise, estimated at some $4.7 billion. And they're launching a new entertainment division with movies, music and non-basketball events. So why are they doing this? Do they need to diversify? Or is this a foretaste of how all the top teams will go? Well, earlier I spoke to Jabari Young, CNBC Sports reporter.
Well, it just helps them align new revenue streams. We've seen over this past 2 years that content is crucial to streaming platforms like Netflix and Amazon, and now Apple's getting into the streaming game with sports rights. And one of the key pieces of content that, we've noticed that have seen an uptick, I'm interested in watching a lot of them, are documentaries. The live entertainment space goes beyond just live sports. You have the documentary space, you have the music space. You have a lot of opportunities where the Warriors can kind of leverage their brand, leverage their content. And this is one of them. And this is going to help them as they, try to become one of the more valuable franchises in all of sports.
I was interested to see, though, that one of their biggest stars, Stephen Curry, Warriors fans will know immediately who I'm talking about, but they can't actually you're talking about content, but they can't actually use material about him at the moment.
Not yet, right? But what they can do is they can collect material on Steph Curry, so that way when they're able to use documentaries on him after he retires, long after, that they have that film, they have that content, they have all of that right there at their fingertips, and you can bet they're going to be, collecting that in-house content, not the content the NBA uses, but their own content, because remember, this is their brand. When you think of sports teams are just local businesses that operate on a national platform, and the Warriors are certainly going to operate their local business and collect the content that's going to keep them relevant beyond years. Because I tell you, even when Stephen Curry retires, people are going to want to know his story. They're going to want to know what he's doing. They're going to want to know how he changed the face of basketball, how it's played, how we look at the NBA. And they're going to be interested in that documentary as new generations of viewers, as new generations of Warriors fans want to know about that history. They're capturing it right now. So this is a bigger play for them. This is not just this year or next year. This is a way bigger play for them, because who else is Steph Curry going to be able to give that content to, right? It's only natural he gives it to the Warriors, and this is perfect leveraging for them.
Okay, but the other thing about what they're all putting together, this is not just NBA stuff. This is other games, other sports, and music as well. They're really branching out.
Yes, this is what you have to do. Remember, the sports teams are content creators. They're content. They create content. They're not tech firms. They're not financial. They create content. And if you want to boost the valuation of your team, if you want to boost lines of revenue, the best way to do that is to add new revenue, so that way you can leverage. Over the last, year or 2 years, one key piece of information in there is how the president and how the Warriors studied what the Michael Jordan documentary did, right? We know Michael Jordan is one of the best or most well-known content, or one of the most well-known NBA players, sports figures in our lives, right? Of this generation, of the decade, of the last 4 or 5 decades. And the guy who you can say will obviously challenge Michael, LeBron James, and the other one is Steph Curry. And so they have Steph Curry within their rights. Bam Bam, who was the K-pop star. They agreed to release a single through him. I mean, listen, I've known through Twitter his mass following. I thought I was just going to put up a story, it would get 10 retweets, 20 retweets. I got over 1,000 retweets.
Well, from K-pop
that's all
fans.
coming from K-pop fans, absolutely. And so this is a smart play by the Warriors. You gain his IP, and you're able to use that distribution to leverage your brand with his brand, and now you create an even more global brand. So it's just smart by the Warriors, and this is a great thing. I think that you'll see more sports teams look outside of just their sports content and want to bring new lines of revenue. And listen, let's not forget, they got the NFT, their own suite exchange, the ticket exchange that they've created. They're thinking beyond just basketball content, and this is going to obviously, I think, challenge one of the top teams in all of sports, the Dallas Cowboys, at relevancy.
Tell me, what happens if they stop winning?
Then everything goes down. It fluctuates, right? But this is exactly why you want to add those entertainment lines, because even if that fluctuates, you can still have a content play where you can license content, because again, that's outside of the sports realm. But I think the Warriors understand that, listen, valuations of sports franchises goes up and down depending on how you're winning. But this is why you put a certain guy like a Steph Curry in place. He's a culture guy. He understands the brand, and the Warriors have obviously understand how he operates. And this is a perfect marriage. He can allow the Warriors to have that success even after he's long gone. The same way we see teams like the San Antonio Spurs, the New York Yankees, the Dallas Cowboys, no matter who walks through that door, the brand, the sports brand is always first. And the Warriors, I think, as long as they can maintain being the first, being a team that doesn't mind going out and spending money to win, the same way the Yankees do, the same way the Cowboys do, I think they'll always have that brand to protect, and it'll always be first. And then after that, you'll have everything that comes with it through the entertainment.
Any thoughts, any comments on today's programme? We always love to hear from you. Our email address, as always, is world.business@bbc.co.uk. This is World Business Report.